Hello and a very warm welcome to another brand new episode of World Panorama, the only show that gets you a 360-degree view of all that's happening in the international arena. I am Teena Jha. Our focus this week is on the widespread unrest and turmoil right from the Middle East to neighboring Pakistan. While the conflict in the Middle East is largely sectarian, leading to a severe humanitarian crisis, the unrest in Pakistan is more political in nature. The ongoing protests led by opposition leaders Imran Khan and Tehreek-e-Insaaf are threatening the democratic setup in the country that was established just a year ago. So today on our show, we discuss the implications of the massive protest in our neighborhood and the position of Nawaz Sharif after this uprising. But before that, a quick check on the top international stories this week. Political deadlock in Pakistan as talks between government and opposition leaders fail. Imran Khan vows to carry on protests till Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif steps down. Gaza strife escalates after peace talks between Israel and Hamas collapse. Fresh airstrikes kill 3 top Hamas commanders. Hamas calls it a huge setback to its fight for Palestinian rights. South Africa reacts to the Ebola threat. Known citizens arriving from Ebola-affected areas of West Africa will not be allowed in. And Thailand's Junta leader Prayut Chan-o-cha named the country's new Prime Minister by the National Assembly. More than a week on since anti-government protests began in Islamabad. Led by Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaaf leader Imran Khan and cleric Tahir-ul-Qadri, who are demanding immediate resignation of Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif, the protests have paralyzed normal life in the capital city. An end to the impasse seemed in sight on Thursday when the opposition leaders agreed to meet government negotiators, but hours later the situation was back to square one. Buoyed by the Supreme Court's ruling that protesters cannot be evicted, Imran Khan has vowed to continue his campaign. Here's the latest.
Imran Khan's Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaaf has called off talks with the government aimed at ending protests that seek the resignation of Pakistan's Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif. Late on Wednesday, Imran Khan sent his emissary, former Foreign Minister Khurshid Mahmood Qasuri, with their list of demands to end the impasse. Even then, Imran stood firm on Sharif's resignation.
हमारी कमेटी तैयार है, गवर्नमेंट अपनी कमेटी तैयार करो, हम बात करने के लिए तैयार हैं, लेकिन मैं फिर से कहता हूँ, बात करने का कोई फायदा नहीं जब तक नवाज शरीफ रिजाइन नहीं करता.
The protesters were promised that the government will get back with its feedback on Thursday, but the efforts failed. There were no more talks on Thursday. In the afternoon, Imran Khan, with a renewed vigor, addressed protesters in the red zone, vowing to carry on with the protest till Sharif steps down.
हमने बातचीत शुरू की, हमने अपनी टीम भेजी इनसे बात करने के लिए, लेकिन बातचीत कैसे कामयाब होगी? हमारा तो पहला नुक्ता ये है कि नवाज शरीफ इस्तीफा दे.
हमारे मुतालबात आईनी और जमहूरी हैं, लिहाजा इनके पूरे होने तक हम यहाँ से एक कदम भी पीछे नहीं हटेंगे, चाहे हमें इसके लिए जान क्यों ना देनी पड़े.
Imran Khan and Tahir-ul-Qadri got further encouragement from the Supreme Court on Thursday. The court rejected a government plea to evict the protesters besieging the parliament. A visibly charged Imran Khan called on his supporters to expand the protest. He said, and I quote, "It is our democratic right to protest. We're not breaking any laws. I request the Supreme Court to have these containers removed so that life can return to normal," unquote. Meanwhile, the Pakistan National Assembly rejected the demand for Sharif's resignation by unanimously passing a resolution.
And to discuss the implications of the unrest in our neighborhood, we have with us today in our studio former Ambassador Shiv Shankar Mukherjee. A very warm welcome to World Panorama, sir.
Thank you.
First of all, let us begin with what led to the flare-up in Pakistan. How come Imran Khan was silent all this while and suddenly 14 months later he emerges with claims that the polls last year were rigged?
Well, that itself is, I think, one of the key factors that has led to this current crisis in Pakistan's internal situation. Yes, the election was 14 months ago. Why the silence till now? The other leader of the the demonstrations, Tahir al-Qadri, the cleric from Canada, if you remember, he arrives in Pakistan about a year ago,
right,
or something like that. In all his speeches, the central theme of his speeches was that the ultimate savior of Pakistan, from the beginning of Pakistan's existence till now, is the Pakistani army. They are the most wonderful people, and the future of Pakistan lies in their hands. He then disappears and suddenly arrives in tandem with Imran Khan's movement 14 months after the elections as the other voice of the demonstrations.
Right.
To my mind, and I may be wrong, but I don't think I am, you cannot have a demonstration like this which takes on the state, and not a very small state either. Pakistan is not a very small banana republic. Needs planning and needs execution of plans. And here I think it's abundantly clear to me that the umpire of this face-off between the demonstrating forces and the elected government of Nawaz Sharif, the umpire as well as the match fixer, is the Pakistan army. The Pakistani army has always ruled Pakistan with or without a democratic facade. Pakistanis are used to army rule. For 3/4 of their existence, it is the army that has actually ruled Pakistan. Right. So I think we can see the kernel of the beginning of the present situation in terms of the fact that there was perhaps a feeling in the army, which is already beleaguered by fundamentalist elements within itself, by creatures, Frankenstein monsters that it has created like the Taliban, which is now biting the hand that has fed it so far. And perhaps a feeling that the democratic setup at the present occupied by Nawaz Sharif might need its wings to be clipped a bit to let it be very clear to them that on big ticket issues, on major policies, that is to say, number one with India, because Pakistan's raison d'etre as a nation hostile to India's interests is the India policy, and Afghanistan. On major issues, it is the army and its view that will prevail, and that any move towards trying to sideline the army and promote a true democratic setup will be scotched.
Coming to the India-Pakistan standoff, India called off the secretary-level talks with Pakistan because the Pakistani resident High Commissioner went ahead despite India's warning to meet the separatist leaders. Do you think that the army could have done all that? Because Nawaz Sharif, when he came to India, during his visit he preferred to stay away from the Hurriyat leaders.
Look, it's absolutely clear, without any fear of contradiction, that Nawaz Sharif stayed clear of the Hurriyat under orders from the army, because he was coming for a ceremonial occasion, and even the forces in Pakistan, which are the dominant forces that wish to create problems or trouble for India, given any opportunity, and even without opportunities, had decided that it was not right, with other stark heads of state of government present with an investiture ceremony of the new government in India, that it was not an appropriate time to do something so silly as to meet the Hurriyat, which would be an unfriendly act at any time during that visit. Subsequently, let's not blame the Pakistani High Commissioner here. He's acting, as all High Commissioners do, particularly professional ones, under the express orders of his government. Now, the government, as far as I'm concerned, except on small matters of administration and relatively day-to-day operations of the government, which is the elected government, on big-ticket issues such as India, it is the armed forces of Pakistan. If one doesn't believe that, one may not believe anything. So the insincerity of the Pakistani government in terms of the talks, which incidentally Prime Minister Modi, following his meeting with Nawaz Sharif, had initiated. I think the Pakistanis made a very, very solid miscalculation. They were probably guided by the experience of the previous 10 years of the UPA government, which was soft on Pakistan, pusillanimous, gave them safety valves when they didn't have any. I mean, I could name instance after instance after instance when the decisions of the Prime Minister and his government during the UPA regime.
Certainly, because that's the argument Pakistan and
yes,
a number of
that
Modi
it's a routine thing. It should
give.
not have been a routine thing. And even if it was a routine thing, it is up to the government of India to change the goalpost, saying that this has changed. You cannot. We asked you for talks. We were prepared to go in for talks, although we know these talks are going to lead nowhere with what we know about you.
So are we looking at a new doctrine under the new government led by Narendra Modi?
Let's not call it a doctrine. Let's just say the new government will obviously have a policy that may be different to the previous governments. Policies can stay the same or they can change.
Also, given the situation in Pakistan right now, what are the options before India? What can Indian government do to, look at stability in the neighborhood?
Yes. Well, the first option, I think, is the obvious one, which is to treat it as an internal crisis of Pakistan. There's no occasion here for our meddling in any way, covertly or overtly, in what is going on there. Our first option and duty, in fact, is to watch carefully what is going on there, because after all, what happens in Pakistan does have an impact on India.
True.
It is a neighbor, a large neighbor, a nuclear-armed neighbor,
Certainly.
which right from its existence has been hostile and inimical to India's interests, whose main aim is to create as much trouble for India as is possible. And therefore, we'll just have to wait and watch and see what the ultimate outcome is. Because in many things, we have to negotiate with Pakistan, deal with Pakistan. And when you're talking about dealing with that country, who do you deal with? Do you deal with Nawaz Sharif today, because he may not be there tomorrow?
Right.
Or you may deal with a prime minister who's there only in name, but has no actual powers?
Right.
Do you deal with the army chief? How can the Prime Minister of India talk to an army chief? It's absurd in terms of protocol and diplomatic behavior.
Right, so India just
So
needs
we have
to
to sit and wait and watch and not be in too much of a hurry and take informed decisions when the time is right.
Right, Ambassador Mukherjee, do stay with us. We'll come back to you later in the show. Moving on to the Middle East now. Days after the temporary truce expired with no headway into a permanent deal between Israel and the Hamas, hostilities in Gaza have resumed. Fresh airstrikes by Israel killed 3 top commanders of Hamas's armed wing in Gaza on Thursday, dealing the most significant blow to the group's military leadership in 6 weeks of fighting.
In a serious blow to the Hamas leadership, an Israeli airstrike in Gaza has killed 3 of its senior military commanders. The 3 were among the 6 killed after Israel carried out at least 20 airstrikes overnight. The development comes a day after Hamas's military chief, Mohammed Deif, survived a strike that killed his wife and child.
قادة القسام في رفح هو جريمة كبيرة لن تفلح في كسر إرادة شعبنا الفلسطيني أو أضعاف المقاومة والاحتلال سيدفع الثمن بإذن الله تعالى.
Hamas is ISIS, ISIS is Hamas. They're the enemies of peace. They're the enemies of Israel. They're the enemies of all civilized countries.
As the death toll in Gaza rose well above 2,000 on Wednesday, the United Nations Security Council expressed grave concern at the resumption of hostilities.
Members of the Security Council expressed grave concern at the return to hostilities following the breach of the Egyptian-brokered humanitarian ceasefire.
Hundreds of Gazans who had returned to their homes after 8 days of relative quiet in Gaza have fled back to UN shelters as Israel called up reserve troops and amassed tanks on the border. Efforts to reach a diplomatic resolution to the conflict drew to a halt in Cairo as the exchange of fire had resumed on Tuesday evening. Israel withdrew its delegation as soon as violence broke out, and Hamas also called for the Palestinian delegation to return home.
Right, Ambassador Mukherjee, coming to the Middle East conflict, we just saw in the report that after a series of temporary truces, hostilities are back again in Gaza. What do you think? In the coming few days, do we see a permanent deal happening between Israel and the Hamas and that peace returns to Gaza?
I doubt it. I doubt it because I see nothing that is happening which gives us even the slightest bit of hope for the very, the good result that you just mentioned. I think there are compulsions on both sides that are fueling this drive back to the failure of the Egyptian broker talks and the resumption of hostilities. On the one hand, Hamas, which takes a more extreme stand than others in terms of opposition to Israel, refusing its right to exist and indulging in these rocket attacks and so on, which gives the Israelis the excuse and the motivation to the extreme overreaction with which they have reacted, but which America and the rest of the world accepts as their right of self-defense, because that's the way the world is at the moment. The fact is that both have motivations which are beneath the surface, but more important than what one sees outside. Hamas, I think, knows that for every provocation it does with rocket attacks in Israel, the Israeli reaction will be swift and will be massive and will be lethal. So you have a death toll which is much higher than the conflicts in 2008, 2012. But through this, Hamas hopes that the sheer level of the carnage will force other Arab nations, many of them who are very rich, towards its side. That no Arab nation would be able to ignore the fact that so many Palestinians are being killed. It's a sort of a, the reaction of the victim in terms of trying to drum up support. Because traditionally, I mean, although there's so much lip service in the Arab world for the Palestinian cause, in real fact, they have never banded together solidly to support that cause in real terms, including from the Arab League, which is probably the most singularly inefficient and incompetent international body that I have ever seen. I don't see a way out of this.
What do you think about India's foreign policy towards the entire thing? Should we, look at the Palestinian cause more seriously and show more concern amidst the international outrage?
Look, we have never been short in terms of our support for the Palestinian cause, sometimes much more than Arab nations have been. In terms of recognizing the PLO diplomatically, giving them a diplomatic status, funding their office in New Delhi and so on, it would be absolutely true to say that we can't do anything more to support the Palestinian cause than we've already done, because short of military support, which we are not in favor of anyway, but diplomatically, politically, and in every way, India's support for the Palestinian cause has been total. This is one of the most important foreign policy challenges for us. We have 6 or 7 million Indians working there who are earning a living and sending remittances back to India, whose lives are the Indian government's first concern in terms of diplomatic effort. You have one of the most strategic sea lanes going past India and the Middle East. Most of our energy requirements come out of the Middle East. I mean, so strategically and for our security, I can't conceive of a part of the world that is of greater importance to us.
Certainly.
But we should marry this with some reality. We are not big players in the Middle East in the sense of being able to influence events, except as someone who's a neighbor, whose voice is heard with respect, and so we must engage. But we must engage with a certain amount of realism.
Right. Thank you so much, Ambassador Mukherjee, for joining us with those details on our show this week. With that, we head into a very short break. Coming up next, South Africa imposes travel ban for countries gripped by Ebola. That and more coming up after this very short break. Don't go away. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching World Panorama. Moving on to some more international news during the week. As West Africa struggles to contain Ebola, more and more countries are imposing travel bans to and from these affected nations, the latest being South Africa. The South African government has banned travelers from the 3 Ebola-hit West African nations. Non-citizens arriving from Ebola-affected areas of West Africa will not be allowed into the country, with borders closed to people from Guinea, Liberia and Sierra Leone. All non-essential outgoing travel to the affected countries has also been banned. Senegal also said it was suspending flights with the Ebola-affected countries and closing the border with Guinea. Cameroon and the Ivory Coast have already imposed travel bans, despite World Health Organization warnings not to do so.
The extent of the outbreak and the increased cases in 3 of these countries, which is Guinea, Sierra Leone, and Liberia, over the last week, Cabinet recognized that even though the outbreak has been limited to these countries in West Africa, the spread to other countries needs to be contained.
Much else has been unfolding around the world. Here's a quick wrap of other international news of the week in our Globe Watch.
Thailand's junta-appointed legislature has nominated the country's military ruler, General Prayut Chan-o-cha, to be the next Prime Minister. The Assembly voted unanimously on Thursday to name General Chan-o-cha to the post during a session in Bangkok. General Prayut was the only candidate put forward. The 60-year-old junta leader is due to retire from the army next month, and the change appears aimed in part at keeping him at the helm as the military implements sweeping political reforms. The Iranian parliament voted on Wednesday to dismiss Science Minister Reza Faraji Dana during an open session. Of the 270 votes cast, 145 MPs voted in favor of the impeachment motion to dismiss the minister, and 110 voted against it and 15 abstained. The dismissal of Dana is a huge blow to reformist President Hassan Rouhani. Dana is seen as a moderate face of the government. His expulsion was backed by Iran's conservatives against a decision to let students expelled from the university after the anti-government unrest in 2009 to return to campus. A week after the death of Brazilian presidential candidate Eduardo Campos in a plane accident, his running mate Marina Silva announced she would replace him on the ticket, setting the stage for a tighter race. The announcement was widely expected. A poll released Monday showed that Silva, a well-known environmentalist, had a better chance of defeating President Dilma Rousseff in the October 5th elections than Campos would have. Campos was polling a distant third before his death last Wednesday. At least 39 people died and dozens went missing after a series of at least 31 landslides struck Hiroshima city of Japan on Wednesday. The landslides happened in a residential area near a mountain in the outskirts of Hiroshima. Japan's Met Office says a record 240 millimeters of rain fell in outer Hiroshima area in the 24 hours up to Wednesday morning, triggering the landslides. Massive rescue efforts continued for at least 2 days to dig out those trapped. Rescue agencies said even those who survived found them stuck in their homes as mountains of mud kept them locked in their own homes.
Shifting gears, time to bring you up to date with all the sports news that you might have missed during the week.
World number 3 Roger Federer won his 6th Cincinnati title with a hard-fought 3-set victory over David Ferrer at the Western and Southern Open. The 33-year-old Swiss won his 80th career title by beating Ferrer 6-3, 1-6, 6-2 to cast himself as a title favorite for the upcoming US Open. Federer stormed back to take the match by the neck after losing the second set, breaking Ferrer 3-1 in the third and putting his Spanish opponent under pressure. The second seed won a love game for a 5-2 margin before breaking Federer for the final time to earn a well-deserved victory. The win increased his match win lead this season on the ATP to 49 victories. World number 1 Serena Williams won her first ever Cincinnati Open and her 62nd career WTA title by brushing aside Ana Ivanovic 6-4, 6-1. Williams needed just 62 minutes to dispatch her Serbian rival and win her second title in a month. The victory was the perfect preparation for the season's final major, the US Open, which begins next week. Williams has now won 62 WTA titles and 5 of those came in 2014. It was the Americans' third win in 4 matches against Ivanovic this year, with the Serb having won their contest at the Australian Open in January. Uruguay striker Luis Suarez made his Barcelona debut as a late substitute in their 6-0 victory over Mexican side Club Leon in a friendly match on Monday. Suarez's 4-month ban for biting was upheld last week, but has been relaxed to allow the 27-year-old to train and play in friendly matches. Suarez won the number 9 shirt and was given a rapturous reception by the Barcelona fans when he was introduced. Neymar scored twice and Lionel Messi also netted in an easy Barca win.
Moving on, a look now at what's creating a buzz in the show business, a look at the latest flakes and news from other arts and entertainment.
God, it's hot in here.
The late Robin Williams will be honoured by his close friend Billy Crystal during a special segment at the upcoming Emmy Awards in LA. The 66-year-old comedian will lead tributes to his longtime friend, who was found dead at his home in Tiburon, California on 11th August after committing suicide. Billy co-starred in the movie Father's Day with Williams in 1997. Johnny Depp sets out on an international adventure in the new trailer for his upcoming action film, Mordecai. The actor stars as the comedy's title character, Charlie Mordecai, who's faced with a mysteriously missing piece of art. The trailer follows Charlie as he sets out to uncover the stolen item that may hold the code to unlimited wealth. The story is based on Carol Bonfiglioli's 1972 novel, Don't point that thing at me. Host of the 66th Emmy Awards, Seth Meyers, rolls out the red carpet ahead of next Monday's show. Meyers, along with producers of the famed broadcast, kicked open the carpet that will greet television's biggest stars as they arrive for the awards on Monday. This year's show sees heavy competition, with Netflix raking up 31 nominations, including 13 for its political thriller House of Cards. HBO's drama True Detective is also hot in the running this year with 12 nods, as well as its medieval fan favourite Game of Thrones, which raked up 19 nominations.
That's all in this edition of World Panorama. But before we wrap up, we leave you with visuals of an interesting online activism, the Ice Bucket Challenge. Hundreds of people, including celebrities worldwide and global icons, are recording themselves as they're doused with ice water for the sake of raising money and awareness for research into amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, or ALS, a motor neuron disease. You pick to this as we take your leave. Goodbye and see you next week.